I'd like to call the meeting to order Thursday, May 27th, 2021. And we'll start with an invocation and pledge of allegiance by Mr. Andropont.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as we gather here this evening, we pause to give you thanks and praise for the many blessings that you have given us. We ask your blessing upon everyone here this evening and our families and our businesses. And we ask that we make decisions this evening that are pleasing in your sight. We ask all these favors in your Son's name, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Andropont.
You bet.
I'd like to remind everyone to silence their cell phones, and if you'd like to speak on a particular item, please complete a blue slip and submit to a staff member. Roll call, please, Ms. Kathy.
Yes, sir. Mr. Andropont?
Here.
Mr. Barrett?
Here.
Mr. Barkey?
Here.
Mr. Gray was unable to attend this evening. Mr. Burley?
Here.
Mr. Gilbert?
Here.
Mr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Landry?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Montel?
Here.
Mr. Richard?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Stelling?
Here.
Mr. Tremonti?
Here.
And President Upshaw.
Here. Thank you, Ms. Kathy. Item 4, take appropriate action on applications for liquor and beer permits. Staff recommends one application be approved.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Stelly and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries.
Move on item 5.
Second.
Item 5, consideration of approving payment of all current invoices and advise regarding monthly budget to actual comparisons. I have a motion by Mr. Andropont and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objections? Motion carries. Item 6, consideration of approving the minutes of the
Move on
regular
6.
meeting of the police jury dated April 22nd, 2021.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Barty and a second by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries.
Move on 7.
Item 7,
Second on
consideration of adopting a resolution approving the industrial tax exemption application for BioLab, Inc. with respect to the rebuild and expansion of its chlorine manufacturing facility. I have a motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Stelly. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item 8,
Move on 8.
Mr. President, I'd like the record to reflect that I'll be recusing myself on item 8.
thank you, Mr. Andropont. Item 8, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the industrial tax exemption application for LACC LLC, also known as Lotte Chemical, with respect to the first phase of expansion of its furnace capabilities, its ethylene manufacturing facility. I have a motion by Mr. Marcantel and a second by Mr. Burley. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item 9, consideration of adopting an ordinance approving the following rezoning application, 2500 block of Delta Downs Drive in Ward 7. I need a motion to approve.
So move.
I have a motion by Mr. Tremonti and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item 10, consideration of adopting an
Move on
ordinance
10.
declaring property located at 1570 East Pine Meadows Drive as surplus property and authorizing the parish purchasing agent to advertise for bids. I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Richard. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Richard.
Mr. President, I was just wondering, why was this property purchased and why did the police jury own this?
I'll ask Mr. Wainwright to address.
Yes, sir, this property was purchased for a road in the Moss Bluff area. It was a little connector road in a subdivision for emergency access and egress. When we were building the road, we bought the entire lot. Now the road is complete. A portion of the lot is now available. We don't need for the road right away. Adjacent property owner would like to purchase that, so we're really just getting it back, trying to get it back into the private sector.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item 11, consideration of adopting resolutions approving calls for elections. Item A, Iowa Fire Protection District Number 1 of Ward 8, authorizing a renewal of a 5 mil ad valorem property tax. Item B, Iowa Fire Protection District Number 1 of Ward 8, authorizing the renewal of a 5 mil ad valorem property tax. Item C, Sulphur Parks and Recreation, authorizing the renewal of a 10 and 25 100ths mil property tax. I have a motion on all bullets by Mr. Stelly and a second by Mr. Hayes. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries.
Move on 12.
Item 12, consideration of adopting resolutions ratifying the following actions taken by President Abshire as a result of the flooding of roadways and waterways in portions of the parish of Calcasieu. Item A, local government proclamation of state of emergency. Item B, Executive Order 2021-02, which rescheduled the Planning and Zoning Board meeting and the police jury regular meeting. Item C, Executive Order 2021-03, which imposed a restriction of boat traffic along the Calcasieu River and English Bayou areas. I have a motion on all bullets by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Guillory. And we have Mr. Grimion to address us.
Thank you, Mr. Abshire. I'd just like to give a short report on what happened last Monday. It was like a lot of days. The weather forecast was 3 to 5 inches, locally heavy at times. So normally they put that on a lot of these tropical type weather systems this time of year. And when I say tropical, I don't mean tropical storm, but a lot of the rain came from the Gulf. So that locally heavy at times, need to pay attention to that because that's exactly what happened. The other thing that happened that morning, which was unusual, is we had 5 tornado warnings, including one that passed right about a mile or 2 miles from here in Lake Charles. The calls for rescue started coming into 911 about 11:30, 11:45. The sheriff deployed his high water vehicles for rescue. The target area was roughly, and Alan, I think, has some graphics to show you, but roughly south of I-10 from Nelson Road east to probably Highway 397. The official rainfall amount at the airport was 11.5 inches, but I can tell you it was probably more than that a little bit further west. Again, Alan will talk about some of the gauge heights there. Again, the rescue started about 11:45. It was Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's Office and later Louisiana National Guard helped them, Lake Charles Fire Department, and later the Office of State Fire Marshal, as well as Wildlife and Fisheries, all assisted in the rescues. The original call we got from the Sheriff's Office said, hey, we have a lot of wet people here, we need a shelter. We called Trinity Baptist Church. They welcomed us with open arms. And we could not have done this without the help of the facility at Trinity, which is a tremendous facility, but more the people of Trinity who helped out with shelter there. It was just a tremendous experience, and we ended up having people sheltered there for 2 nights. Over 300 people came to the shelter. About 150 of those spent the night. A lot of people had relatives pick them up or other things. I think the total people rescued was around 400. As I said, we had 150 people stayed overnight. The next morning, we had 73 people remaining that just didn't have a place to go, so we put them in non-congregate shelters, which is, in other words, a hotel room. Thankfully, we were able to offer that for those people who didn't really have a place to go immediately. The damage, of course, we talked about the water, but so far in Calcasieu Parish, 1,469 flood insurance claims have been filed. And the damage.la.gov, which is probably primarily people without insurance, but we've been asking them to report. We've had 1,008 people at this point who signed up for that. So we're right at 2,500 probably structures reported, and I can almost guarantee there's more out there. So Alan might have a little estimate, but I'm guessing that we'll end up probably with around 3,000 dwellings being affected by this storm. I know Alan has a lot more to share with y'all, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer about the response or whatever.
Mr. President, if it's okay with the jury, I think it would help if you go ahead and let Alan cover his, and then y'all can ask whatever questions of either Dick or Alan or anybody.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a PowerPoint tonight. We're going to cover a couple things Brian asked me to put together for tonight, understanding that we need to give you a few updates on a few other things as well. We'll certainly focus on the May flood event. Goes without saying, I saw this earlier in the week or at some point, and just goes without saying that we've had a wonderful run here of bad luck in terms of the weather and everything else. And so to be named the most weather-battered city in America is pretty dubious title, I guess. But anyway, I'm going to move on. So I'm going to try to talk about 4 major areas tonight just to give you some updates and fill in some blanks where I can. First thing we'll talk about is the hurricane debris removal, and really we're at the final stages of that, but I want to give you a quick update on that. So this is where we stand today on the big Laura hurricane debris removal package. We're really in the final days at this point of that package. We anticipated finishing the storm debris at the end of the month. We feel like we're on schedule. Jade Miller here with my staff has been working countless hours on that. You've probably all talked to him at some point. We're really close on that aspect of it. We're right at 7 million cubic yards picked up. This is strictly Calcasieu Parish unincorporated areas. That number nearly doubles when you throw in the municipalities and all the others. So tremendous event. Really, we are getting to the end of that operation, though, thank goodness. But because of the May flood, we're going to have to help those citizens that flooded. Like Dick said, our estimates, we asked some of our consultants that work on this stuff with us, our estimates for really homes and structures in harm's way was about 3,500 that we really feel like may very well have flooded based on the information we have. So it's that's kind of coming to fruition, and not good news, but it's certainly puts it in perspective. The green area on the slide here, you may have seen it in some of our press releases. We're reopening these wards 1, 2, 3, and 8 because that's where the heaviest part hit. So those are open now for residential flood debris only to be put to the road. We're asking that debris be there by the 7th. We're hoping to do this in a single pass, and realizing that's a challenge, but That's the goal, to try and catch back up, finish back up, and move on to other things. So again, we're talking here about the unincorporated parish routes only for purposes of the program that you run tonight. Anyone outside of that open window or area can certainly, if you flood it or have an issue, can certainly call our office, and we can certainly run those case by case. But, obviously with the rain we have, I'll show you a little bit in a minute, much less rain on the west side of the parish, and we should be much better off. All right, so I'm going to move a little more into the data on the May flood. Dick alluded to it already. The published number that we have right now is honestly probably pretty low. We're working with the National Weather Service. We present our data, the data that comes out of your rain gauges, to all these guys, and it really is substantially higher than that in a lot of places. There's a lot of reasons for the data shifting around this, that, and that. It's going to take a little time for it to work out, but we're certainly providing them with our information so that, the best number, the most accurate information can be out there long term. So this is just one of those standard graphs that kind of gives you the sort of light blue South Lake Charles to East Lake Charles. That's what Dick just described. That's exactly where it hit in general terms. This slide is a slide of your rain gauge system. I realize it's a little hard to read, but more than anything, I want to make a plug that you can go online and see these gauges anytime you want. It's open to the public. There's no sign up. There's really nothing there. It's really some interesting things. You can really begin to learn about your area in particular and understand what the flood elevations mean to you, what rain amounts mean to you, and we just encourage citizens to get involved with this system because it's just educational and it'll help you make better decisions long term. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So this is what Dick was describing. This is the hardest hit areas. Now the numbers you're looking at, if you can see them on the graph, really represent a 7-day total around the storm. You might recall that about 3 days after the main event, we got some pretty good rainfalls in some areas. So that 7-day total that is 24 point something inches right there at McNeese Street and Contraband Bayou is a tremendous number. If you take out the 2 or 3 days afterwards and you focus on the main event, that number comes down to right at 21 inches. That is an unprecedented amount and may be the record amount for a 1-day event and essentially about a 6-hour event in Calcasieu Parish on record, period. So we're working with, you can see all of our gauges in that area were 12 was the least amount we caught in the heaviest hit area. So we certainly believe that you had a lot more rain than that. Give you a little bit more perspective on this. I apologize now, I didn't realize this, but the numbers are really hard to read in the sort of pink color at the bottom left of this graph. But what they're telling you is that the 1-hour event, the 2-hour event, the 3-hour event, the 6-hour event, the 12-hour, and the 24-hour were all over 500-year status for these areas, for that gauge at Lake Street. So, to say the least, we had maybe the most rain ever in that little area, at least what we've recorded. So, that's what this gauging system's here to do, help document what really went on and provide some information going forward. Last little thing in this little system, if you do get to looking at it, you do get to using it, this is a nice little sensor that we put together during this event, actually. This is just a snapshot in time. Not sure what time it is. It's really not relevant. Once you look at this sensor and you turn it on, it's going to tell you what gauges are going up or which ones are going down. So green is going down, red's going up. At this point in time, you can, this was really about 3 days ago. This is on Houston River. You can see the red ones are roughly on Houston River and the West Fork of Calcasieu River, and they're still going up. Several days removed from the event, we're still gaining flood elevation in those in those areas, and we certainly, begin to experience more and more problems. So just an interesting one that we use a lot. As you use the site, you might enjoy watching this one. It's really how we keep a pulse of what's going on out there on any given day, and it's how we move your public works resources around to be where they need to be to try and solve problems. So it's that's what we use the system for. All right, I'm gonna move on to public works activities as a whole. Since post-Laura, there's been a lot of discussion, and obviously we've had a lot to do. The focus of these numbers I'm gonna give you, though, are just drainage related. I would tell you first that we have a very high-tech system as well in this. Cooperative is the name of the system. Is specifically built to track public works operations. All of our crews have input devices. Every work order gets put into a system like this. It's all GPS based. It's just modern as these systems get, and we do our best to use it 100% of the time. So when we give you data, we feel like we're giving you the best we can. This is a map, a dot map, and some lines of work that has been done since Hurricane Laura, just in the drainage sector of our work order operation. So a little over 2,000 work orders. A work order can represent something as small as a culvert cleaning to ditching for 1,000 foot. It's kind of hard to tell at this level what it all is, but it could be in that range. I got a little bar chart right after this to show you. One of the things I want to highlight, now in the storm and in these times, we have moved crews around and shifted and tried to do our best to be as proactive in every spot that we can. But on a normal day, the type of crew resources you have as Public Works for Calcasieu Parish is in that little chart on the side. So there's just not a tremendous amount of people doing it. And what I want to highlight is the guys y'all have working for y'all have worked tirelessly. They're doing everything that they can to do to make it as best they can. It's just a tremendous task out there, and you just got to congratulate them for trying as hard as they have all this time. Really appreciate their effort. So this is just a little breakdown of the work orders themselves that make up that 2,000. And again, some of these look simple, but they're not that simple. They can be up to multi-day projects. Some of them bridge maintenance projects, is just 13 of them, but they were pretty significant, for instance. So it takes a lot of time to get to this. Just want to show you the kind of information we can give you if you need it. Quick shot of the bridge system. It's not just the roads out there. Our guys have checked all the bridges. We've inspected bridges. We've fixed bridges. It's just a tremendous amount of work that they've done post-storm to get things in order to be as usable as they are today. We know we've got a lot of work left, but we're going to keep going forward. I want to make a plug for one of our best programs. It's tough, but as we sit around here and we're looking, trying to see where is the finish line, how can we get over the finish line? And I certainly would love to be able to tell everybody we've cleaned their ditch, maybe like it was pre-storm. But the reality is, just like I was telling you, there's just not enough resources to do that thoroughly, that quick. And I want to make a plug for our program. We get a lot of calls from citizens who won't know how to help. How can they participate? How can they help out in the problem? I think they realize the size of the problem. I just would encourage them to, get involved with this program, find a way to help your neighborhood, get that last little bit of debris out of them ditches. And that last little bit is somewhere between debris and litter. Get it picked up so we can drain as best we can. Like I said, this is just a typical picture on a typical lot at the top. That's where we started several months ago. We really are down to the last little bit in those ditches. And one way we can help with that process is through the Pick It Up Calcasieu program, maybe. So it's just an idea. I want to put that out there. Last thing to cover is the drainage overall parish-wide lateral system. This project, you've heard me talk about it before. It's been a long path to where we're at today, and we're not necessarily satisfied with where we're at today. We have meetings as early as tomorrow's schedule. We're trying everything we can to get this project going. But first thing I wanted to, y'all know this, but it's a very extensive drainage lateral system out there in Calcasieu Parish. This named system represents over 1,600 miles of laterals of all sizes. all degrees of difficulty to get to them and maintenance them. And unfortunately, a big part of them all received some level of damage. There's just really not a place in Calcasieu Parish that got skipped. So there's a tremendous amount of work. We estimate somewhere between 1 million and 2 million cubic yards of debris are out there. We're working through the process to try and do that. Our gravity drainage districts are working every bit that they can to do what they can, but it's a resource issue with them as well. There's a lot of miles to do. So because of that, we started early on trying to work our way through really what's called the NRCS process, which is a long process. More than anything, unfortunately, it's a grant process. With any grant process, there's some level of competition. There's an entire litany of things to put together before you might get awarded. And just looking at this list, you go through a long trail just to get awarded, then you have to contract it out and do the work. So we understand frustrations out there, the timing on this. We're going as fast as we can. We're certainly meeting, trying to find ways to speed this up, ultimately to get into more of a disaster recovery mode than a grant process mode is the goal. And with that, I really don't have a timeline for y'all other than everybody we have that can be working on it is working on it, and they're trying to do as best they can to get it through. It's just a long, drawn-out process. I think that ends my presentation. I'd be more than happy to try and take some questions if you would like.
Do we have any questions for? Yes, sir. Mr. Hayes.
Alan, do we have a regular ditch maintenance plan that we go to once a year, once every 6 months, something like that, and go through all 15 districts?
I get that question a lot. Unfortunately, the answer is no, sir. What we're more or less a request-driven operation. So we certainly have people out looking for problems. We certainly are proactive when there's problems that we see. Every rainfall event, I have all the crews looking for problems, digging up, removing debris, identifying hot spots, if you would, of where we could go back and be proactive. But with that said, the majority of your resources are spent managing and completing work requests that come directly from citizens. And it could be my ditch doesn't drain well, the culvert's blocked, this, that, and the next. So we are certainly heavily complaint driven. We also do the proactive things. To be more proactive, in the past 5 years, we've begun to roll drainage projects into your road overlay program, which is a program that systematically goes around to every road every 10 to 15 years in a process. And so what we're trying to do there is when that overlay program comes to your neighborhood or to your road, that we take a good hard look at the drainage and see what can be done and include that work in that process. We call them road prep projects, drainage projects. So that's how we try to be much more proactive than in days past in dealing with problems and getting to them before it's a complaint. We obviously would, that's our goal. So.
One more question, if I could ask you. So if I'm a citizen out there and I'm going through all these experiences that we're all going through,
Yes, sir.
the best thing for me to do when I'm hit with something challenging like the flood or whatever is to pick up my phone and call either my police juror or my city councilman or
Well, we would certainly recommend that they call our public works operations. Again, we have people there full-time. They answer that phone. That's what they do. They generate the work request that ends up being, the dot on that map. And what happens is, if it's a maintenance thing, then our maintenance departments will go forth and try and get it done as timely a manner as possible. But when it's more complicated, they kick it up to our engineering department in our public works main office, where we have engineers and others who will go out and, maybe there's a more complicated solution needs to be developed. And that's, you've worked through a couple of these now. Some of those take a long time, but they do happen. And so that's how we manage individual requests. And again, we try and generate our own through proactive watching of the drainage system, this, that, next. Just I think sometimes in reality, we get a lot of repeat calls each year for maintenance of the ditch that is, really, it gets a little unsightly. We have a tremendous sewer thing going on there with over 35,000 individual treatment plants in Calcasieu Parish, all putting sewer in the ditch. So that develops a maintenance need pretty regularly, and that really eats up a lot of resources.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Tremonti?
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, I want to thank Alan and Jade, for your response. Every time I pick up the phone and call, you guys take care of it right away, and I'm sure the citizens appreciate that too. I guess my two questions. Alan, do you have the ability to let us know the last time a lateral or a canal or something was cleared out? 6 months ago, 3 months ago? Is that all time-stamped, like FEMA time-stamps their things?
Well, when we talk about laterals and those things off of the road right away, Mr. Tony, generally, that's all going to be in your gravity drainage districts and under their systems. So I could certainly ask for that kind of information, but do not have the ability in-house to generate
Perfect.
it.
Yes, sir. That leads me to my second question. And I'm sure, look, I'm new, like 10 of us, and I'm going to ask it because I went out and met some people that have been calling for about 2 or 3 years. They're right on the edge of the city and the parish line. So they'll call the city and then get referred over to the parish, who refers them to gravity drainage. And for the last few years, nothing's been done. It's kind of a circle. But I walked about a mile of that canal down that neighborhood, and there's no way anything had been picked up for many years. There was tree tops falling all the way down from McNee Street. It's on, I think the road's Powell Road or Powell Street. It runs between Country Club and kind of dumps off back somewhere on McNeese. But that whole run was littered all the way down, and over 40 homes flooded back there.
Yeah.
So who do they call? And when they call somebody like me, what do I tell them?
So what that lateral that you're referring to is in the jurisdiction of the gravity drainage district number 2. It's their legitimate responsibility to do whatever work is needed. So it starts there. But anytime we get that call in our operations, especially if it's from you guys, we don't like to just give the number out and say, go call gravity drainage. We really like to go try and work through a solution when it's possible. So in any particular situation, I'm sure there's some extenuating circumstances for why work has happened or not happened. Everyone is its own case. So we like to dig into that and then get it to the right person. But the scenario you're describing there would be gravity drainage.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Landry?
Thank you, Mr. President. And that's Mr. Brame's district, so that was one thing you could tell him, call Mr. Brame, he's very familiar.
Okay.
And that's called a donut hole also, because they're right in the middle of the city, but yet they're not in the city limits.
Yeah.
Because they annexed all around them. I've been down there many times. They probably would have flooded anyway. It could have been perfectly clear. With that much rain and the tide coming in, there's nowhere for the water to go. But it still needs to be cleaned out, without a doubt.
Thank you.
What I asked to speak for was not that. What I wanted to ask, Alan, is several months ago, and you know what's bad? When I hear something down here, I repeat that to people. And I don't usually try to tell a lie. I might, but it's certainly not on purpose. I thought that these laterals were going to go to bid like within the next 2 months. Because I was, if we back up a few months, And, you know, it was going to be this massive job, and it would bankrupt us to try to clean it out. There's more cubic yards of debris in the Laterals than there were, and I didn't make that up. I was told all of that, and I was told that it was going to go to bid, which that's been a little while back. Now, and I know y'all quickly identified where all those spots were through drones or however you did it. So if I just understood what you just said, it doesn't sound like it is going to bid in a month or so. Are y'all waiting on a grant, or what's going on with this exactly?
Well, first off, you're correct in that it won't be, more than likely, it will not bid in the timeline that I gave you the first time, and it was with the best of intentions that we gave those timelines. The process that we're having to go through the NRCS has certainly not been a pleasant experience and a fast one. It hadn't been for lack of try, I can tell you that. It's more, it's a very cumbersome, long process, grant program, if you would, that requires just a tremendous amount of hurdles to go through. We are submitting packages to them. We are moving it as fast as we can. We are also seeking a new path that might be faster. So unfortunately, the timeline for that program continues to extend, and I guess I would hesitate to try and give you another timeline because I've been fooled before. It's just, we're doing everything we can to expedite it. We cannot answer at this moment when it may happen.
That's a good answer.
Mr. President, can I add to that,
Yes,
please?
sir, please.
Mr. Landry, I remember when we were talking about that, and we've learned a lot since Laura. It's like anything else that's new. After Rita, which was a bad storm, y'all will recall, of course, that there was debris and all, but it wasn't near like this in the Laterals. I think we went in thinking we knew it was different than the road debris pickup, but we didn't know how different. So Alan is correct, and they followed through, and they've made a lot of progress with the system in place. Unfortunately, it is so different from working with FEMA and the road debris, where once you know the rules, you get everything in place, you start picking it up, you can just go to town. This is built, that NRCS is a federal agency, National Resource Conservation Service. It is built for long-term, helping with drainage, and it's a traditional grant program. You send it in, they come and look at it, and they look at the lateral, and you can pick that up, but not that. It is not built for hurricane recovery. We didn't realize the extent of that, and I think we probably assumed it'd be a little more like the road debris, that once you go, it's like a slow train at first, but man, that goes fast. This is the complete opposite. So we're going with the guidelines we have to deal with. We're literally in the middle of trying to figure out if there's a different route to take, maybe through FEMA, that would allow a little less application of regular regulations in a non-hurricane or disaster recovery. And it has just been an enormous wake-up call for us. So I apologize. On our behalf, we probably didn't understand the depth of how difficult. It was certainly not to try to mislead. So we'd love to give you an answer, but I think we're trying to figure that out. Having said that, and we can get more specific later, a lot of things have already been assessed and submitted, which Alan covered in his graph a minute ago, to try to test drive what they're going to do with the submittal for some cleanup of certain ditches. We're kind of trying to submit, they call them packages or packets for selected areas, and if we can figure out how that works, it's going to determine what route we take. So I hate that it's not great news, but it's not for lack of trying.
Well, and I appreciate everything that y'all are doing, and I understand how that happened now. And yes, I thought it was FEMA. I repeated that to several people, which I don't know, and I can't even go back and call them and tell them, hey, that's not correct anymore, which that's not good, I'm sure in a couple of months, I'll figure out who it was, because they're gonna be calling me back saying, hey, they still haven't cleaned this out yet. Yeah, I mean, that's great to continue to work that, but we gotta do, I mean, something. I mean, we've restructured all of the drainage districts. I don't remember how many there were. What were there, 8 of them? 7 or 8, and now we're down to 2. But, you know, we've fixed the tax situation. All of that's gonna get fixed. But my gosh, we gotta figure out something. And maybe they don't have the resources to do this on their own. I know those guys are out there working, and they're doing the best they can, but they're overwhelmed. And, I mean, you know, we need to get involved. I mean, I know it's not technically our responsibility. It's really the responsibility of those districts. But something's got to give somewhere.
Well, and to your point, Mr. Landry, you're right technically, but we all realize that the water all flows from the streets to the laterals, so it's all of our problem. And as early as this morning, and we're going to continue that, when we met with the city of Lake Charles, because this particular flood is, by the way, this issue is the whole parish. But because of last week's flood, this one is more on everybody's mind. But we met with city officials and the district and said, look, we've got to all three work together, and then, of course, we'll do with the west side, too. It's a joint problem, even though everybody's got their role. And we are literally, like, as early as tomorrow, we're trying to figure out all the way to our federal representation. Guys, the systems in place don't fit our problem, and this is too big to ignore because of that graph where we've never had hurricane debris in ditches like this, ever. And it's way too big for us, way too big for those districts, but we've got to figure out a better way. So we're going to need, I guess you'd call it political help to change the way this is done, because it doesn't fit systems in place that the federal government has. It just doesn't fit. I don't know why, but it doesn't.
I mean, I would ask that y'all give us an update. I mean, at
We
least
will more
every 30
frequently-
days, because I know I'm not the only person up here getting these kind of phone calls. I mean, they want to know, and we just need to be as informed as we possibly can be to pass on the correct information to people.
Yes, sir, we will do that, and I think more frequently for sure. A lot of this is we learned since Laura and Delta, and it's natural that this would happen. When you have an event so severe like last week, it brings up a problem that was unique to that event, but it just triggered everybody thinking, look at all the debris in the lateral.
Well, they would have flooded anyway.
No, but,
you were gonna flood.
and look, we can get later, Alan and these engineers have some really interesting and important data to learn, and the short answer is the debris in the laterals did not create these floods. We got to get them out, but I don't want anybody thinking that that's the reason.
I agree.
But you're right, we are going to improve our communication more often. We're just getting to the point where we're learning how this works more, but a lot of work's been behind the scenes, and we will up that level of communication with all of you and the public.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr.
President.
Beam. Mr. Marcantel.
Yeah, Alan, is anyone working the issue of the utility and cable companies? I know in my district, those ditches are just full of cable, all over the big cable. You know, when those companies came through after Laura and Delta, whatever they cut, they just dropped it in those ditches. Well, now the grass is green and getting tall, and when those mowing machines hit it, and I mean, it's all over my district, all over.
So you're referring to some of this in the lateral system itself, right?
No, in the roadside.
Because in the roadside ditches, we have been working that
Okay.
issue. We have been for 2 months now trying to make sure our roads are prepped, realizing that now, especially the growing season's here, and with all this moisture in the ground, that, you know, there's a lot of grass going to be growing. And so we have been, and we'll, you know, double down on that if there's some in your area, because we've certainly been in contact with the companies that are responsible for that. So maybe we need to find those particular ones and make sure they're called.
Thank you, Mr. Marcantel. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Alan, I want to tell y'all doing a great job. But back on the grant program again, so is there a deadline or time frame for the grant approval? And if we, by any chance we don't get it, is there like an actual plan B to go into something else?
Yes, sir, there's certainly a Plan B. The Plan B, and from day one, was to, so first off, we didn't choose this grant program that we're going through. The NRCS is a requirement. It's where FEMA will send you day one when you have watershed issues, lateral issues. So this was not to necessarily seek grants in terms of, or in lieu of some other process. We had to go here. We have to start here. With that, you know, the real, I don't know if there's a deadline per se, but as you submit your packages and you get them either approved or disapproved, then you, in theory, have the opportunity to go to FEMA for another swing at the plate. So that's the Plan B. Honestly, what we're trying to do at the moment is switch gears sooner rather than later and get to FEMA tomorrow morning if we could. We just feel like that'll be a much more successful path. What I've described it as is, you know, we're in a grant program, we need to be in a disaster recovery program. And there's just fundamental differences. And that's what we've, you know, had to be dealing with the last couple months, and we're trying to make the move.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And Mr. Barris.
Thank you. Mr. Wainwright, I'm not an overly intelligent guy, but I know it's a shock, isn't it? You know, would you agree that unlike our roads that are all built to a certain spec, width, road base, you know, just, you know, you can clean our roadside ditches with a lot of the same equipment, right? Just kind of a repetition. Same grade all can go over there, can go out there. Yes?
So far, yes, sir,
Yes.
I agree.
So, on the other side of that coin, of these 600 miles of laterals, how many of them are exactly alike? How many of them have the same exact issues? How many of them have the same type of debris in them? How many of them can be cleaned with the same piece of equipment? See, it don't match. The process doesn't match. So it's not as easy as doing our roadside stuff, and we got to understand that. There's some, especially up at the northern part of the parish, they don't even have banks. They're gonna have to, you know, they're gonna have to barge stuff in there. I mean, it's not like they can just send the grade all crew out there. It's a big deal. We're only 9-10 months after this, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I can certainly, the degree of difficulty to this debris compared to the roadside is double it, triple it, pick a number. That's gonna be reflected in the cost to do it as well. So, you know, where a cubic yard of debris on your roadside literally costs you $20 to $25 per cubic yard to be picked up. Good thing FEMA picked up, you know, 90% of that bill. That's you know, roughly a $150 million program that we got going on. Well, you can bet that the cost per yard, in what Judd just described, every piece of it is a higher level of degree of difficulty to get. Combine that with the regulatory issues of wetlands, coastal zone, wildlife fisheries, the litany of other regulations that pop up when you start working in these areas. It's a tremendous sized problem. Even if you got the go-ahead today, it's going to be crazy expensive based on the degree of difficulty to do it.
Thank you. And I just want to say to our public works crews, I'm a big fan. You know I am. I see them, and I know they're out there, and I know that they're tired, and I know they need a pat on the back, and I'm here to give them one. And like I said, we're not, in the grand scheme of things, there's no other parish in this state that could pull this off. 100%. So I think that we've done a good job. We've got the staff, the intel, the resources. We use them correctly. I appreciate your hard work. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wainwright. Item 13, consideration of adopting resolutions approving cooperative endeavor agreements for hurricane debris removal from various Calcasieu Parish drainage laterals. I have a motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Barty. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item 14, consideration of adopting a resolution invoking authority for a declaration of a public emergency for any procurement related to the purchase of equipment needed to remediate parish buildings from the May 2021 flooding event. I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Richard. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item 15, consideration of authorizing the parish purchasing agent to advertise for requests for proposals for emergency standby products and services. I have a motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Barty. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item 16, take appropriate action on the following bids. A, proposals for one-stop operator for American Job Center. Staff recommends the proposal of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury Human Services Department be accepted. Item B, proposals for professional services related to grant application development and grant management assistance. Staff recommends the proposal of C.H. Finstermaker and Associates be accepted. Item C, bids for metal pipes. Staff recommends the respective low, responsible, and responsive bid of Eunice Coastal Culvert and Supply, Inc. be accepted. I have a motion by Mr. Guillory and a second by Mr. Burley. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item 17, consideration of adopting a resolution of condolences to be forwarded to the family of the late Dr. Garrett Ryder. I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Barty. And I'd just like to comment on that point of personal privilege. Dr. Ryder was a wonderful husband, a wonderful father. He was a very good friend of mine, and health issues cut him short. He was a great psychiatrist and a member of the community that his contributions will not be forgotten. So my thoughts and prayers go out to his family in this time, and I appreciate your support on this. So, another point of personal privilege, I'd just like to fill you in on some recent events. Last week on Thursday, I had the opportunity to meet with the governor along with Mayor Hunter. We had a 30-minute meeting with the governor in Baton Rouge, and we pressed the need for hurricane relief dollars and pressed upon him to reach out to Congress and to the president to please plead on behalf of us to get some appropriations money. We also had a very good conversation, myself, Vice President Brame, Mr. Beam, Mr. Bolin, and Mr. Grimion, with Congressman Clay Higgins Tuesday. It all runs together. But we had a good hour-long meeting with him. There's some positive things coming out of Washington in relation to our area. We need to be patient. I know we're all a little impatient. We've been waiting long enough, and that's what we pressed upon him. And hopefully in the next week or so, we'll see some fruits from that conversation. So just wanted to keep you all updated on what's been going on. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to it. I'm sorry, Mr. Guillory?
I just want to say that part of the governor's deal was also great for the terrorists, coming up with that program also. That was a great program. I know you was over there.
Yes.
And I heard about it, but that's a great program, coming to help the terrorists out.
Yes, $30 million to buy out the Greenwich Terrace project is going to be huge for that area. So thank you for reminding me.
Thank you.
I have a motion. Yes, adjourned.